in 2013 where infidelity rocked the core of the family. It's all on you, Teddy.
It started with a whisper, then a live stream, and then a claim no one saw coming. People are saying Tina Campbell didn't just speak out, she detonated something. Because suddenly, names weren't just names anymore. Teddy Campbell, Erica Campbell, and at the center of it all, a child. Not rumors, not vague accusations, but what looked like something deeper, something documented. Now insiders are asking a question no one wants to say out loud. What if this wasn't just betrayal? What if this was a secret that was never supposed to surface?
I filtered everything through it. Everything. So when loneliness showed up in my marriage, I went back to the old Ted.
Wow.
That's exactly how
It didn't begin with chaos. That's what made it unsettling. By the time Tina appeared, it looked like she had already crossed a line internally, like whatever she was about to say had been sitting with her for a long time. There was no shouting, no emotional explosion at first, just control. And that kind of control? It usually comes after something has already broken. She spoke carefully, chose her words, paused more than usual, almost like she knew every sentence carried weight. Some viewers thought it was just another emotional moment, but others, they felt something different. Because the tone didn't match a reaction. It felt like a reveal. And then small details started slipping in. References that didn't fully connect, yet felt intentional. It looked like she wasn't just telling a story. She was leading somewhere. And when the audience realized that this wasn't about healing or closure, but possibly exposure, that's when everything shifted. Because now, people weren't just watching. They were waiting. Waiting for the moment where everything would finally make sense, or fall apart completely.
You know what I mean? A lot of fear that my wife wouldn't understand if I told her the issues and problems I was having. Because when me and Tina started dating, she didn't know that much about me. I hid that part from her because I knew if she knew.
Half the audience leaned into defense. The other half leaned into investigation. But no one stayed neutral. Because this wasn't just a rumor anymore. It felt like something bigger was trying to surface. And in the middle of it all, the silence. No immediate response. No denial. No clarification. And that silence? It started doing its own work. Because when something this serious isn't addressed, people fill the gaps themselves. They build timelines. They reconstruct possibilities. They search for patterns. And the longer it goes unanswered, the more real it starts to feel. Now another name begins to carry weight, Warren Campbell. Because if even part of this holds up, then this doesn't just affect one relationship. It affects multiple. And suddenly, this isn't contained anymore. It expands. Across family lines. Across public perception. Across everything people thought they understood. And just when it feels like it can't escalate further, insiders suggest something even more unsettling. That what was shown might only be the beginning. That there could be more. More context. More details. More pieces that haven't surfaced yet. And if that's true, then what we're witnessing right now isn't the full story. It's the first crack.
I'm a firm believer that charity begins at home and then it spreads. And then I forgot that part. And so I contributed to the distance in our relationship.
Beneath all the speculation, there's something more human happening. Because strip away the headlines, the theories, the analysis, and you're left with one thing. Impact. The kind that doesn't just hurt, it reshapes how someone sees their entire past. Because if what Tina is suggesting even partially reflects reality, then every memory changes. Every moment of trust. Every shared experience. Every time she stood beside them. Now carries a different meaning. And that kind of realization doesn't happen all at once. It builds. Quietly. Painfully. Until it reaches a point where it can't stay contained anymore. That's what her delivery felt like. Not sudden. Not reactive. Inevitable. Like something that had been sitting beneath the surface for far longer than anyone realized. And when it finally surfaced, it didn't come out clean. It came out heavy. Because this wasn't just about exposing others. It was about confronting a version of reality that no longer made sense. And once that happens, there's no easy way back. Only forward. Even if forward means stepping into something uncertain, something public, something irreversible. And that's what makes this more than just a story. It's not just what's being said. It's what it means if it's true.
Found out about it when we were taping the show.
The damage didn't wait. It started immediately. Clips spread across platforms. Narratives formed in real time. And perception shifted. Because once an image changes at this level, it's almost impossible to fully restore it. People aren't just reacting anymore. They're deciding what they believe. And belief moves faster than facts. Now every past moment is being re-examined. Every public appearance. Every interaction. Nothing feels neutral anymore. Everything becomes potential evidence. And that's where the real consequence begins. Not in what's proven, but in what people accept as possible. Because once a story reaches this scale, it stops belonging to the people involved. It belongs to the audience. And the audience is still building its version. And just when it feels like everything has already been exposed, it hasn't. Because what makes this situation dangerous isn't just what's been shown, it's what might still be hidden. If insiders are right, this wasn't a reaction. It was a starting point, a first move, which means what we've seen so far might only be the surface. So now the question isn't what happened, it's what's coming next. More proof? A response? Or something even bigger? Because if this continues, this won't just be a scandal, it will be a collapse.
I started realizing how faulty I was. The fact that I've been a contentious wife the entire time I've been married to him, I'm sitting up here running around being
To understand why this hit so hard, you have to look at the image that existed before all this. For years, the public saw stability, faith, unity, a family structure that didn't just exist, it was admired. Nothing about it suggested cracks this deep. But insiders now say that perception might not have told the full story. Looking back, people are starting to revisit moments that once felt normal. Interviews, appearances, subtle exchanges, things that didn't stand out before, but now feel different. There's talk that tension didn't appear overnight, that certain dynamics may have existed quietly beneath the surface. And if that's true, it changes everything. Because it means what we're seeing now isn't a sudden collapse. It's something that may have been building, slowly, quietly, carefully hidden. Some are even suggesting that timelines don't fully align the way people once believed. That certain events overlap in ways that raise questions. And then there's the name that keeps coming up, Krista Nicole Campbell. Not loudly, not directly, but enough to make people pause. Because once that connection is even suggested, the entire situation shifts from emotional to something far more complicated. Now it's not just about who hurt who. It's about what was known and when. And if even a fraction of what's being discussed holds weight, then this wasn't just hidden. It was maintained, which introduces a darker possibility, that this wasn't chaos. It was structure. And if that's true, then what Tina may have stepped into isn't just betrayal, it's a reality that was carefully kept out of sight until now.
I got love. I don't need the other kind of love. I'm fine, at least for a little while. You know what I mean? Because I got her. You know what I mean? And so
I'll
he
check
was
in
just
with you next month.
Everything changed the moment the conversation stopped being vague. Because up until that point, people could still dismiss it. Speculation, emotion, misinterpretation. But then, something shifted. Tina didn't raise her voice. She didn't escalate the way people expected. Instead, she introduced something that looked deliberate. A document. Not explained in full. Not broken down in detail. Just shown. And that alone was enough. Because once something visual enters the conversation, it stops being just words. Now it becomes something people can analyze. Frame by frame. And that's exactly what happened. Clips started circulating almost instantly. People zoomed in. Slowed it down. Paused at key moments. Trying to understand what they were actually looking at. And that's when the narrative took a turn no one was prepared for. Because according to what's being interpreted, this wasn't just about emotional betrayal. It pointed somewhere else. Toward a possibility that felt almost unthinkable. That Teddy Campbell may not just be connected to the situation, but directly linked to something far more permanent. A child. And not just any child. A child connected to Erica Campbell. Now, to be clear, nothing has been officially confirmed. But the way people are connecting the dots, it's enough to create a storm.
The person who it was, she used to work for me, and so that broke my heart. She was like a godmother to my children.
Because once that idea enters the conversation, it doesn't leave. It spreads. Some viewers immediately rejected it, calling it impossible. Others started asking questions. If this wasn't true, why present it this way? If this wasn't real, why now? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, if this has been hidden, for how long? Then came another layer. DNA. Not introduced casually, not framed as speculation, but mentioned in a way that suggested certainty. And that's when everything became heavier. Because DNA doesn't invite interpretation. It suggests conclusion. And once that entered the narrative, people stopped debating emotions and started debating reality.